you're on the spot with Mande Wilkes.
Welcome to On the Spot. I'm Mande Wilkes. Happy New Year's Day. Welcome to 2012. Last week we aired the first part in a two-part special on religion and politics and faith in government. A religious roundtable. Last week we focused a lot on Iran and Israel and America's role in protecting Israel and protecting also America's homeland security and economic security. This week we have a lot of different topics to cover. Let's introduce our guest first of all before we get started.
I'm Kevin Childs. I'm the pastor of the Rock Church in Conway. We meet at Conway High School on Sunday mornings.
I'm Rabbi David Weissman. I'm the spiritual leader of Temple Shalom, located at the Waccamaw Medical Park, just north of Conway Medical Center.
My name is Manzarul Islam. I am Imam in Kairi Islamic Association, which is in Triangle area between Raleigh and Durham. So I'm here with you.
Hello, and I'm Dawn Yeager, Swami Ambikananda from Shanti Yoga in Myrtle Beach and out of the Temple of Kriya Yoga in Chicago.
Welcome everybody. Glad to have everybody with us again, sitting down in the studio to talk about the role of religion in politics. There's so much to talk about. I feel like we could have every week the show be a religious roundtable. Religion has such a central role in politics right now. We have the presidential primary coming up in just 3 weeks on January 21st. To that point, you know, in South Carolina right now, Newt Gingrich is pulling ahead, and it seems to be, all the polls suggest it's because Mitt Romney, who's the front runner everywhere else, is Mormon. So South Carolinians seem very resistant to electing a Mormon for president. Now what's interesting about that is Newt Gingrich is a recent convert to, I believe, Catholicism, but before that he had a kind of colorful marital history, 3 marriages, and his current wife was his mistress during his second marriage. So it's interesting to me that South Carolina evangelical voters prefer a philanderer, let's be frank, a philanderer, to a Mormon. I think that really, you know, shows the divide in South Carolina that the evangelicals have, I think, with the traditional non-evangelical voter. Does anybody have anything to kind of speak to about that?
Well, I think people are maybe just more comfortable with what they're used to.
You know, you bring up a good point. I think that people are so resistant to electing a Mormon president because most of us in South Carolina have not been exposed to Muslims. They are kind of an insular religion. They aren't necessarily out and about in your face with their Mormonism, so it's not too easy to learn about them. So are you saying, Swami Abhikananda, that it's South Carolinians are just unfamiliar with Mormons and that's why they're hesitant to pick Mitt Romney?
Well, I would hope it's that rather than just being not open-minded or not willing to learn. I think that in general, people always move toward what is more familiar, what is feels better for their family, for their community. And I think that in this time we're afraid and we're busy, and how much time does that leave, you know, to study and to be open-minded? I think it's something we all have to make more time for.
I understand what you're saying, and that it's kind of fear-based, I think.
You know, South Carolina is a conservative state, and conservatives believe that we should go by what the Constitution says. In Article 6, Section 3 of the Constitution states, there shall be no religious qualification for anyone to hold public office in this country. I go by the Constitution. If it's good enough for the Constitution, it's good enough for me, and I don't think that Mitt Romney's religion should have any effect on whether or not people vote for him.
But are you surprised that it is having an effect in South Carolina?
I'm disappointed.
Disappointed.
I know a pastor got in some trouble for saying that Mormonism was a cult, and but I pastor a diverse church. Our theology is thoroughgoing, Bible-believing evangelical. But I could vote for Mitt Romney for a couple of reasons. One is, although I think I can demonstrate Mormonism is not Christianity, we're also not electing a theologian in chief.
There's no, right, there's no Christian way of balancing the budget or Mormon way of balancing the budget. We're all, I think, kind of looking for the same things.
My political views, and I'm more of a political junkie than I want folks to know, are informed.
Well, they know now.
They know now.
They know now.
But it's informed by my faith. I think everyone probably is. But for me, if I'm voting for a president, I'm never going to find one, and neither is anybody else who agrees with me on everything, particularly faith. But I can vote for the guy whose positions on things that are important to me match my worldview most closely.
You know, there was a time in this country when a Catholic could not be elected president. When Al Smith ran against Herbert Hoover in 1928, he lost primarily because he was Catholic. Well, we've gone past that stage. John F. Kennedy became the country's first Catholic president, and I think we should get past this stage also. You know, whether or not someone wants to vote for Mitt Romney should be based upon his stand on various issues, not on the fact that he's a Mormon.
And I would like to add here first. According to the Islamic point of view, there is no separation of church and states. And the religion, the alternative word for the religion in Islam is the word deen, which has very comprehensive meaning. So for the Muslims, no matter Mormonism, Christians, Jewish, whatever the candidate is theirs. So just to add to your points, whatever is in favor of them, if they think it's helpful for them, they will go for that. They will not care whatever the religion the candidate is holding and what's their faith. It's not matter for the Muslims. So if the candidate is in the favor of Muslims, they will go with that.
That's a really interesting point, because something else I really want to talk about is how Jews tend to vote liberal. And a lot of conservatives ask me and ask all Jews, why is it that Jews vote liberal when it's in Jews' best interest? You know, the perception is it's in Jews' best interest to vote Republican, because Republicans have such a strong view that, you know, America has to be an ally of Israel no matter what. And also because there's the perception, let's be honest, that Jews are high earners traditionally, and that so would stand to benefit from the Republican policy of low taxes on high earners. So we talk a lot, you know, you mentioned the point about people voting for their own interest, and I think that would make total sense. I think we all do that, except we see in the case of Jews that doesn't happen, and we see in the case of blacks that doesn't happen as well, because, you know, blacks traditionally vote Democrat, you know, elected Obama, and yet blacks tend to be very, very Christian, very, very far right in their social views, very socially conservative, yet they vote liberal. So here we have two significant blocks of American minorities voting for the left, when it seems like voting for their best interest would put them voting for the right. So, well,
there is a prophetic tradition in Judaism, a tradition of social justice. Now, you might say that from the standpoint of economic interest, a lot more Jews should be voting for the Republican ticket. But I think that Judaism takes a broader view of personal interest, not just economic interest, but the interest of society as a whole. And as a result, many Jews, although it is contrary to their economic interest to vote for the more liberal candidate, they feel that in the interest of social justice, they should vote for the liberal candidate. However, having said that, there are many prominent Jews who are Republicans. You know, Eric Cantor, the Republican whip in the House of Representatives, is Jewish. There are many Jews who are heavy contributors to the Republican Party. So,
more and more, I think, and you know, I think now there are, besides Eric Cantor, as you mentioned, there are very few Jews in Congress. I think now 3 of the major senatorial races include Jews as frontrunners on the Republican ticket, which is such a switch from what we've been seeing. So I wonder if we see a changing tide, you know, within that, and that would have huge impact from a campaign finance standpoint, and also from just a voter standpoint, the turnout, and you know, what that means for who's elected. Did anybody have anything to add about black people being traditionally socially conservative and really in alliance and in line with the religious right, but yet they vote left, just like the Jews do?
I think it's social policy. I think with the Jewish vote and the African American vote. I'm not sure the Jewish vote is as Israel driven as some might think, and I think it boils down to where a candidate falls on the size of government and some issues that are dear to social conservatives like pro-life and so forth.
I agree. Does anybody have anything to say to that?
Well, I'm not sure if it's race or religion necessarily, but I feel like when you have a strong faith, whatever it is, you are always thinking of the good of others. You're always thinking of 10 years, 20 years down the road instead of what taxes you pay at the end of the year. When you have a strong faith, I think you start to realize that necessity may not be 3 cars and a big house. Necessity may mean what is the bigger picture for my grandchildren, for my brothers and sisters around the world, rather than my paycheck week to week.
I think that's a super, super insightful point that we're talking about here, that religious voters often, with the exception of Christians, often vote liberal in this country because liberals kind of have the upper hand on the social justice aspect of government. That is really, really insightful, and I think really indicative on where we stand and kind of the direction of government. Now, the Tea Party has come to be a defining force in politics right now. What's interesting about that is the Tea Party is, when the Tea Party came out, I kind of thought, I was under the impression that this was the kind of economically conservative but socially liberal wing of the Republican Party. That's turned out to be the opposite. The Tea Party is the really social zealots, the really people who believe that we have to be evangelical and that kind of thing. For example, Tea Partiers are much more likely in polls to show opposition to gay marriage and gay rights, much more likely in polls to show opposition to abortion. So the Tea Party is such a defining force, and I think we really see a resurgence here with the Tea Party of a social conservative Republican Party. And to kind of connect the dots here to what we were talking to the previous point, that's kind of a danger, I think, to the Republican Party if we're saying that religious people often vote liberal because they have to prioritize social justice over economic issues, and then you have the Republican Party kind of being driven by the Tea Party to be more far right on the social issues and worried less about social justice. I think that's a real danger, and I think it really may mean that Obama, for example, is going to get reelected, and it may mean that we see a liberalization of this country over the next generation or so, with the right kind of pulling back and being even more far right on the social issues, and the voters looking for social equality, which is kind of the left's paradigm.
There is sort of a contradiction in some of these views. On the one hand, we find people on the right want to limit government intrusion into business and economic affairs. But on the other hand, they want to control the personal social affairs of individuals. So they want less government intervention in economic affairs, but more government intervention in the way people conduct their personal lives.
There's a huge inconsistency there, I agree. I'm surprised more people haven't picked up on it yet. I think more and more people are picking up on it. I think that's where the Tea Party was born. I think that's where Occupy Wall Street was kind of born from. Anybody have anything to say to that?
I would take just a little bit behind I will go for the Muslims here. As I mentioned before, we don't have separation of church and states. So according to Islam and religion or the deen, so Muslims have all the systems, economic systems, judicial systems, social affairs, private affairs, everything are very clear in Islamic books and according to prophetic saying, and in Quran. Many verses are there, many hadith of Prophet Muhammad you can see there, it's very clear. And for the matter of economic systems, when we speak, people are giving vote, whatever is in their favors. That means they look who is close to their systems. So whoever is close to their system, people are going to vote that candidates. And Islam has very strong economic systems and economic backgrounds. So these days we are seeing what's happening here. That's a usury system, and interest based of the systems. Just today I was reading in one of the newspaper, it was saying people around the world, in 73 countries, people are thinking to implement Islamic economic systems, because it's not like usury system or interest based system, it's something different. Just a couple days before, I was watching a video on YouTube in India, in Bombay exchange stocks. Experts, economic experts are talking, and one of the Muslim was delivering lecture and explaining how Islamic economic system functions. And part of that system is implemented already in UK. And here I heard many people, many thinkers and academics, they are talking about that system. So Muslims, when they are going to vote, they don't think just it's for their personal favor, for personal benefits. No, they think so whoever is close to their minds, close to their community, close to their systems, so they picked up that candidate.
Does anybody have anything to add to that?
On the issue he raised, I suspect that he and I disagree over how we interpret separation of church and state. In some conversations, because I'm pro-life and pro-family, I've had friends who are more socially liberal than I say, but you don't have the right to impose what you believe on other people. And I'm not sure that's true in this regard. We vote for candidates that we think will lead in our direction. So when I've been asked, but you have no right to tell a woman what she can do with her own body, and you have no right to try to dictate who can marry whom. I'm sympathetic with that, but I think the law does draw boundaries for us.
And do you think that those boundaries are consistent with the constitutional requirement that church be separated from state?
Yes, because I think some tend to overemphasize the establishment clause and forget about the expression clause. I think the separation of church and state was largely to protect the church from the state and not vice versa. I don't think because of the preponderance of places of worship in our country are Christian that anybody has a right to bully others into adopting Christian views. But I do think legislation over time changes minds. And we have to rely on something to draw boundaries.
Legislation by definition changes minds, because that's a forceful way of, it's not changing minds, it's changing behavior. So legislation may change minds, but first it's changing behavior. And I think there it is inconsistent with values voters. I think there's an intrinsic inconsistency with the constitutional separation of church and state.
The friendly argument I've had with more liberal friends when they argue against what I believe is, on the other hand, however, if their position is you can't impose your brand of morality on everybody through force of law, there's also inconsistency with liberals who would like to enforce their views of social justice, saying we're going to elect politicians who take more of your tax money to feed the poor. Feeding the poor is a good thing, but it is a moral position.
Well, it's the same as money going to war, though. We don't necessarily get to pick that either. If there was a box where I could say I would like my tax dollars to go to the poor instead of to ammunition or whatever it may be. And laws are tricky. Laws are tricky because each of us have different experiences, and we never fully understand someone else's until we're there. So when we talk about pro-life or gay marriage, it's, I think, a bit easier, or at least less emotional, to have a firm idea if you are not a pregnant woman or a gay man. I think unless you are one of those things, I think you can have an idea about it, but there's just no way to know 100% unless you're that person. Just like when you're a child, you think, 35 is the oldest thing in the world, and then when you get there, you realize maybe not, So I think growing and experience and learning from others.
Swami Abhikananda, you speak a lot in your yoga studio about people being more similar than they are different. And I think that has such applications in government and policy and politics. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I think the human population, and not only the human population, but even the animal population, we all move away from pain and suffering, and we all move toward happiness and pleasure and peace. We just do that different ways. We do that in different skin, we do it in different bodies, we do it with a different ideal. But at the end of the night, when we close our doors and we're with our family, I think we're all so much more similar. We want a loving family, we want a peaceful environment, and I think that we want to contribute. And I think that sometimes fear or maybe just unawareness makes us stick in one direction, even when maybe our population or our world or just you personally may have outgrown it. I think that it takes a very big person to change their mind.
What do you all say about that? Do you think that, we'll start with you, do you think that people of all religions are more different or more alike? And how do you think that kind of relates to politics?
I think whatever is going on these days, so people are more different. But if they go back and focus on their root, Abrahamic faith, so I don't think differences between the religions. They all are same, and they believe in God. They have book, scriptures. Many similarity you can find between the religions. But religions these days are politicized more than the religion. So that's why I think there is distraction, there is something not, the environment is not suitable for us. So in the name of religion, we are fighting and we are going against of another. So if we will think on this issue, in this matter, very deeply, so I think there will be no destruction and nothing against humanity.
Okay, Rabbi Weissman?
I think the problem between people develops when a particular religion feels it has a monopoly on truth and is unwilling to accept or to be tolerant of the beliefs of another religion. Look, I'm a rabbi, but I don't feel I have a monopoly on truth. I feel there are many multiple roads to truth. Now, Judaism may be my truth, but somebody else may find truth elsewhere, and I'm not going to denigrate that person's search for truth. So I think that people are similar in that they're all searching for truth. People, as far as their material needs are concerned, are similar. They all want to have enough to eat. They want to live in a peaceful environment. They want to see their children grow up and live in a peaceful world. And in that respect, there's a bond between people of all religions, all backgrounds. But the danger comes when one group says, I have a monopoly on truth, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to impose my views on you.
I think that the real danger, before we kind of keep up with that, the real danger with that is not just people saying I have a monopoly on the truth, but a government saying that on behalf of its people. I think that's the real danger.
And I think it's a very clear, your point, in Quran, no compulsion in religion. So if people are doing, somebody is forcing to someone, that's their individual acts. But Islam as a religion, as a deen, does not impose, does not force anybody to accept Islam, to be Muslim, and to participate in their environment and whatever the Islamic faith is that. So Quran is very clear, and prophetic saying is also very clear. If the people in your society, in your community, they don't believe in your faith, so just leave them and deal with them very good manner. So, but other than that, if we see individual acts, so that's sometimes individual acts, sometimes some groups acts, so that we should not supposed to say, or we will not say that this is the religion which is emphasizing on these points. So Islam is very clear here.
You know, you bring up something interesting. There's a sect of the Republican Party, the far right, that's very worried, very concerned that Islam and Americans, Islamic Americans, are going to try to institute and implement Sharia law here in the United States?
First, I don't know what's their concern. If they have that concern, but I don't think that has to be a matter of concern, because if it would be implemented, I don't know what is their argument and what's their discussion, but I don't think Sharia law is against the humanity. Sharia law is perfect, but I'm not saying it's the true and you have to follow that, but if you will implement that, you will feel relief, you will feel love, a lovely environment, you will feel peace. So that's, if people have fear, it's their over understanding of the Islam or Sharia law. There is nothing in Sharia law which can harm you, which is against you. So if you have fear, just sit down and try to discuss a matter, resolve the matter, try to understand that. So nothing is fair in Sharia law, I think, according to my understanding, or according to the Islamic teaching.
Okay. Are Islams in America or Islams in your community, I'm sorry, are Muslims in your community trying to or support implementing Sharia law in America?
No, we never discussed in this issue. We never talked that, and it did not come in my mind too. But just a day before, I was in a church, friends we have in our community in Wake County, so Martin Luther Church. I have been invited there to speak there. So we were very friendly. We talked about our faith, our religion. Nothing came out, and we did not think about that matter.
Okay, we have just one more minute. Anybody want to say in closing?
If I could speak quickly to what she said about what we have in common. One of the points I've made in arguments with some atheist friends is there is this mysterious common morality, regardless of your faith tradition or where you live. We just seem to know you shouldn't take an innocent life, you shouldn't steal a man's wife, and I think it's a strong argument for the existence of God. To his point on a sort of monopoly on truth or exclusivity, I think you can believe that you're right. Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father but by him, and I believe that. But I also believe I should give everybody else's belief respect.
And deference,
I
right?
should be tolerant. I shouldn't require. There's a difference between persuasion and coercion. So I think it can be both.
Okay.
I do believe that's
that
true.
closes up this week's show, the second part in a two-part special on religion and politics. I want to thank everybody who participated both weeks in this religious roundtable. Pastor Kevin, Rabbi Weissman, Imam Manzer, and Swami Ambikananda. Thank you so much for participating. I think this is a really, really useful and timely discussion for everybody watching. Whether you're politically active or politically inclined, this is something that really touches everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, same time, same place. Until then, I'm at mandewilkes.com.